I'd like to call the May 13th meeting of the City of Ben Harbor Planning Commission to order. City Clerk, would you call the roll, please?
Commissioner Adams?
Present.
Commissioner Archibald? Commissioner Bell?
Present.
Commissioner Henry? Commissioner Hensel?
Present.
Commissioner Marshall? Manager Little? Mayor Mohammed? Chairman Reed?
Present.
You have a quorum.
I'd like to move to agenda item number 3. That's the approval of the agenda. Can I get a motion for approval?
Motion to approve. Supported.
Commissioner Adams made the motion and supported by Commissioner Bell. Call the roll, please.
Commissioner Bell?
Yes.
Commissioner Henry? Commissioner Hensel?
Yes.
Commissioner Marshall? Manager Little? Commissioner Adams?
Yes.
Commissioner Archibald?
Yes.
Chairman Reed?
Yes.
Motion carried.
Agenda item number 4, approval of the minutes for March the 4th. Are there any changes, additions, or deletions? Hearing none, I call for a motion for approval of the March 4th minutes.
So moved.
Motion is made by Commissioner Hensel and supported by Commissioner Marshall. Would you call the roll, please?
Commissioner Henry? Commissioner Hensel?
Yes.
Commissioner Marshall? Manager Little? Commissioner Adams?
Yes.
Commissioner Archibald?
Yes.
Commissioner Bell?
Yes.
Chairman Reed?
Yes.
Motion carried.
I'd like to have a motion to approve the April 15th meeting if there's no changes or additions or deletions. Hearing none,
So moved.
motion is made by Commissioner Hensel and supported by Commissioner Bell. Would you call the call the roll, please?
Commissioner Hensel?
Yes.
Commissioner Marshall? Manager Little? Commissioner Adams?
Yes.
Commissioner Archibald?
Yes.
Commissioner Bell?
Yes.
Commissioner Henry? Chairman Reed?
Yes. At this time, I'd like to open up the meeting for public comment. If anyone has any comments they would like to make, please step forward at this time. No one has responded, therefore I would like to close this portion of the meeting for public comment and move on to item number 6, new business. Do we have any business that's new? Hearing none, we'll move on to old business. Old business will be an zoning ordinance update. I will give a brief update. We came into possession of certain information yesterday that we need to add to our agenda, and that would be the updating the ordinance. However, since we weren't able to get that in time, I don't have hard copies for everybody. So I will put on the screen a copy of the information that I received. Does any of the commissioners have anything that they would like to state before we get started? An opportunity to add or modify or change any of the existing information that we have. Commissioner Henry?
I'm sorry, I did kind of peruse this document, the draft, and there's quite a few little changes and hiccups in it. So it's something that we need to diligently look at it and make sure it's in order with the ordinance, the master plan. So this draft is truly a draft, and it needs to be looked at completely, comprehensive.
Commissioner, City Manager Little?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, just a couple of things that I'd like to make sure that we have addressed. As I look at the plan for our Ox Creek project, where it goes under, where it crosses Empire, there's automotive type business down there. It's right on the creek. I want to make certain that the zoning on that parcel is compatible with the rest of the zoning up and down Ox Creek, so that if this business leaves, there will not be any other like that down there. That may be a problem, the one that's there itself, with oils and greases and all of that right next to that creek, while we're trying to clean up the creek and remove contaminants and things of that nature. Another concern I have, and I didn't get a chance to go through all of the ordinance, but I know from time to time, we've had discussions about containers and tiny homes and whatnot. And my concern from the viewpoint of the city manager would be that if we're going to have containers or tiny homes, that we identify areas where nothing else is there but those things. I don't want to see containers stuck in the middle of regular neighborhood housing and whatnot, because it will create problems for valuation and everything else there. They should be in areas that are set up just to handle those. If there's going to be containers on a particular area, let containers be there, but not all over. And same with tiny homes. They belong in areas themselves.
Commissioner Adams and Commissioner Hensel.
Okay. First off, thank you, Chairman Reed. In regards to something that the gentlelady of the third ward stated, even though it's a draft, it's still revisable anywhere along the way, even after it's adopted by the city commission as full. Okay, the commercial property that the city manager mentioned, it's been there, and I'm just needing to know, is that the one that was a taxi? Okay, so
Yes, it is.
Is that deemed a commercial property now? And do we run a business out of business? I mean, I don't know what that looks like or what we have to do. Or is it something that the commission has to do? I know it needs to be cleaned up, and we don't need oil and all of that type of stuff. I mean, do we give them another option to move somewhere else if we're willing to work with a business like that? I don't know what that looks like. And thirdly, what city manager just mentioned about tiny homes and container homes. I've seen some container homes in some other communities that dwell within in homes that were just built. And I think that I don't think that we should shut ourselves out and off, but there should be a standard of what they look like, and they all have to come through here prior to any building or setting of such a thing, don't they?
City Manager, did you want to respond to that?
Yes, I would say simply that communities make their choices about what they will and won't accept in their areas. This is a city that's in a state of need of rebuilding, and in the process of doing that, we already have difficulty with properties being able to hold their value. I remember being in a meeting about a year and a half ago with the new director of MEDC when somebody told them that Yeah, and I'm listening, and somebody who was supposed to be a champion for us told them that the problem with building houses in Benton Harbor, if you build one and finish it today, and it costs you $300,000, tomorrow it's only worth $180,000. You know, I didn't like the statement. There's a certain element of truth to it, and because of that kind of thing, we can't afford to take the measures that maybe some other communities should. If somebody puts down $200,000 to build a house in a neighborhood, he ought to reasonably expect that there are going to be similar houses built within that area next to his. If we vary to where we got containers, tiny homes, even for that matter, certain modular homes and whatnot, it's not compatible. It will not increase and induce growth that like we want to have it in the community. So I think it's to our advantage as a city trying to come back to keep these things separate.
Commissioner Hensel?
There are a couple of things.
The issue of the commercial property, if I might, excuse me, we're just trying to, on that matter, change the zoning. It doesn't take the business away from the people.
So yes, I just wanted to answer your question about the zoning on that particular piece. According to the latest draft of the map, which we have a printed copy here, but we don't have I don't know, maybe there's an electronic copy that Mr. Reed could show us, but that particular piece of property was changed with the last update of the map to parkland. So there is a parcel that's commercial, neighborhood commercial along Pipestone at Empire, but then there's a little wedge, which we thought was the property that you were mentioning, that has been changed from commercial, and I don't think it was commercial when we changed it either. I think it had already been changed to residential since those businesses went in. So we're changing it to parkland in order to try to avoid that. Should the building become available for purchase by the city to add to the park, or if it were to be reused for some purpose, they would still have to come back to the city and get permission to use it for whatever new use. So there are a couple other things.
Madam Chairman, may I thank you? Thank you, because I didn't know that, and it was empty for a while.
Right.
Okay.
So a couple of other things. We just heard about bungalow courts. Bungalow courts are a middle housing type. They are currently on the use table. They're allowed in the residential group of districts. So it would be the residential neighborhood, which is RN, RM, as in multifamily, MU, which is mixed use, and CL, which is local commercial. So those are, as this draft stands, that's where they would be allowed for a bungalow court. It doesn't, the square footage for an individual house, I don't believe changed in the definitions or in the, in where it talks about the sizes of lots and all of that stuff. I don't believe that language changed much to allow someone to build a 200 or 400 square foot house on a standard lot. And then, what was the other thing we were just talking about? Oh, containers. So containers, as the draft is currently, would be allowed in local commercial district, central business district, light and heavy industrial. And it doesn't say containers themselves. It says containers as building materials, except for open air storage. So it makes the distinction that you can't just plop a container on the street and call it a building. You have to use the container as part of a building. It cannot be just dropped there as is. So I think that helps a little bit with definitions and what's already been raised. So,
When we reviewed that part about the containers and containers being construction material, we meant that if you're going to live in it, it has to meet the same qualifications as a house that's to be occupied, and no occupancy permit would be given to a container to live in unless it meets all the requirements. Now, if we look at the zoning changes, residential neighborhood is what we were after, and this was one of the reasons that we didn't change the existing housing requirements. But if we're looking to increase taxes, property taxes, we have to look at increase per acre. What's going to give us the greatest return? And when you look at that, you discover putting like properties in an area. Harbor Town would be an example of a neighborhood that maintains its value. So there may not be as many places in the city that we can do this, but this is an opportunity for us to move back into the residential areas. But you have to maintain a reasonable amount of density, and that's where the mixed residential comes in. And if you look at the current zoning, you will see where where you would have an opportunity to do that. One of the best areas would be in your downtown business districts where you can have multi-use projects where you could potentially do this. And when we start looking at residential properties up to 4 units, that can be anywhere in the city. But if you go any larger than that, now we have to look at the mixed use and the property tax return that we're going to get from the density of those types of properties. Also, this is an opportunity for us to bring up some of the issues that we're addressing now. As we dot our I's and cross our T's, we're getting to a point where very shortly we'll be ready to forward this to the city commissioners for them to review. And that will be just that, a review. Then with 15-day notice, we can give the public an opportunity to look at this to see where they fit. So a lot of these issues that we're bringing up now will be addressed in the future. But today, we're looking for what we're actually doing now, things that we need to take a closer look at and perhaps go a little deeper into the definition of what they are. Now, the zoning ordinance is the way that we implement the master plan. The master plan calls for a lot of things that the zoning ordinance simply supports. So we'll have to go back to the master plan on many of these things to make sure that that's exactly what we're doing.
Amby, were you, okay. Just very quickly. If we're making distinction between tiny homes and containers and things, the question has not been asked because it's happening. And I personally want to know what the city is going to do about it because it's going on and been going on for too long. The little bitty home, they're not even houses, they're sheds that are built like the Amish build for lawnmowers and stuff like that. Are we allowing people to just sit those down and live in them, turn them into homes?
No.
No. Forgive me for what I'm about to say.
I mean, is that a part of the master plan?
Hang on, I'm about to open your eyes a little bit. We simply need to read the ordinance. Just about every question that you've asked is answered in the ordinance. Now, the current ordinance pretty much stays the same, what we've added would be the missing middle, or the housing part. We're trying to figure out how to get more density and where to put it. Its intent is to increase the tax base without raising property taxes on the citizens that are already here.
Get that and I understand that. But the question I just asked about these little things, they're not adding to our tax base. And I'm just wondering, I haven't seen any discussion or anything about that in our, while we have our city manager here, I'm just, he knows already.
You have a question?
I just want to make a statement. Tiny house districts and containers are completely different. The containers have to have so many square feet, and that is considered a house, a residence or building. So the tiny houses have different criterias than the containers, so you can't loop them together. So if we're gonna look at the missing housing, tiny houses might fit some of that missing, and containers will also take care of others. So we can't put them together. They're separate.
Once again, the zoning ordinance addresses the issues that you just brought up, and that's where we begin to look at the types of housing, the size of the lots. It's all in the, the setbacks and so forth. And it's quite complicated for someone who's not familiar with site plans and how to read them and how to interpret them. So there's a lot of things that we are trying to do with the current ordinance so that it's more consumer-friendly. So we'll show you some of those features that we built in it. Commissioner Marshall.
I'm just wondering, I think I heard you correctly, Mr. City Manager, when you said you want to put them in separate areas. I agree with that. I don't think they should be scattered throughout the city. That's not the plan. I'm asking you, Mr. Chair, that's not the plan.
Neighborhoods is what you want. Similar types of property tend to hold their value better. Too many different types of properties, it's harder to establish a, we have the previous assessor here who could tell you why it would be better to put those things all together as opposed to scattering them all over the place. And city managers just mentioned that that would be one of the things we're looking at. And you have to maintain the current and existing properties. You bring in a more expensive property into the neighborhood, the assessor most likely is going to look at the increased value, and you're beginning to raise taxes on those homeowners. Whereas if you put it where it's in the neighborhood, then you tend to localize it. You'll keep it in one spot or in one area or one part of town.
So it would kind of be like a trailer park.
That's what we're avoiding. That's the whole idea, to avoid utilizing containers as living quarters or living residents or whatever you want to call them.
What I'm seeing, the direction of the city, I don't think those kind of things are going to go with what's coming into the city.
Once again, we need to take a careful look at the existing ordinance and then determine if changes are required to match the master plan, or community plan as we now call it, to make sure that we're going in the right direction with the changes that we're making.
Mr. Chair.
You're speaking, I'm going to say this, Mr. Henson, and I'll be done. You're speaking of the master plan. According to the master plan, they're supposed to build so many houses. Are those things going to be considered as houses that the master plan is potentially bringing forward?
We need to put the ordinance up to show you how this whole thing is structured, and then you can better understand what it is that they're attempting to do. But the master plan is the basis for the changes that we're putting in the ordinance so that they match. They have to go together. The new plan does not match up with everything that they're trying to do with the ordinance. So that's why we have to make the necessary changes. And when you look at it and read it, and we're going to have another get-together before we turn this over to the city commission.
So just
Mr.
quickly, are we talking about just districts, different districts of different types of housing?
Zones.
Zone, yeah,
Zones.
yes.
Okay.
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Hensel?
I just wanted to say, we do have in this ordinance, as in the current draft, a minimum for a single-family house of 720 square feet. So those aren't tiny houses, and that's the minimum. That's the current listed minimum. Also, we also call out design standards, and I think starting on page 30. And it illustrates them, but it also describes them down to how many windows, where they can be, if it's got a flat roof, certain types of various things that relate to that, horizontal moldings, materials, vertical and horizontal alignment of windows, entrances, and facade treatments for depending on where they are. So regardless of whether it's made of a container or whatever the materials are, they still have to meet the standard for the neighborhood, and the house will have to start at 720 square feet. So I think we have protections there, and this is really complicated to read through all of this, and we're going to see some things here, I hope, that will be helpful. But we really have to go through this and read line by line as much as people probably don't want to spend that time. There are a number of things that answer your questions.
Yeah, I just want to say that one of the things is that you have to keep your housing uniform. So you have to keep so that a certain style of home or whatever is in different neighborhoods, so that somebody come in and it's not everything. If you're looking for a nice home and you come in and you got those little bitty homes and those, you know, that changes everything, and then it makes it hard to keep value. When I was an assessor, you have to have minimum standards, and you have to have certain things that can go into certain areas, and when you lump everything together, it affects the value tremendously. So that's one of the things we need to keep in mind. And then one of the other things is that you can have so that when they come in with those smaller houses and the storage units and stuff, that they have to have a special use permit to be able to put those things in certain places.
Currently, it's even more restrictive than that. I mean, there are places where they absolutely cannot go. So that, when I mentioned where the buildings made of containers go, not as this draft is written, they cannot go in a residential neighborhood. So if that's just what's written in here for your information, and then if you have comments about that, we'll need to see what the comments are so we can try to accommodate your positions.
Oh, okay, I was turning it off. Okay. There's a whole section on this, and it explains the sizes, setbacks, accessory buildings, accessory dwelling units. Now, accessory buildings and accessory dwelling units are not the same thing. A dwelling unit you live in, accessory building is part of the main building with additional uses. And that's all outlined in the ordinance. And when we talk about the types of structures, yards, setbacks, we're looking to see the size of the house that's to be built, and based upon the ordinance, will it meet all of the setback requirements to fit on a certain size lot? I would also like to add that the subcommittee of the Planning Commission will be meeting next week, and we're going to get into the finer details of the outstanding properties that we need to take a look at. I'm going to suggest that we also walk the neighborhoods to make sure that every opportunity, one way or the other, can be met under the existing ordinance. Or if not, what changes do we make to make sure that they do? Commissioner Adams?
Thank you. That's a wonderful idea, though I don't think I'll be doing too much walking. I'll keep it to as much as I can. My question becomes, in the midst of all this, building on addition to an existing, where are we there?
When you look at accessory buildings and we start talking about, let's see if we can find it here. I think this would be an example. One, you add to the existing property, and the others can be built on the lot next to the properties, as long as it's part of the original property. It sounds like I'm talking in a circle, but you would have to read the entire standards as they're set forth in the existing plan here, where it says measurements and exceptions.
Okay.
It's quite thorough.
And I don't know what that looks like, and I have not read it yet, and I know I need to, because when I purchased the properties around me, the county treasurer recommended for tax reasons that I do not, at that time, combine them, because the taxes would be much higher, and he recommended that I kept them separately, and he was right. But if I wanted to build onto, say, one of the properties that's adjacent that I own next to it, to add on to the existing, would I have to combine those? Or would they be taxable, taxed at separate values?
You can have a pre-meeting with your building officials, and you could also talk to your assessor.
Okay,
as to what the best way to resolve
Okay,
that
and I'm
issue.
asking that question while we're on this for others that may be listening and thinking about and want to ask the same thing. And shouldn't we have that information up front for them instead of me as an individual? But it should be on paper for others to read and understand for themselves as well.
Mr. Chair? The
Commissioner
ordinance
Hensel?
spells out how far you have to be off a line. So if you're not, if, in this case where you're building over a line into another piece of property, you're going to have to combine them so that you have one lot. Otherwise, you cannot build from one lot to another because you need to have a minimum separation between buildings of 10 feet. So on each side, so that would be 20 feet. So if you want to build a building that goes, across the lines, you have to combine them. But it does explain too that for people who want to build on the smaller lots, there are provisions in here so that you would still, if it's a lot of record and it's 30 feet, you can still build on it. The setbacks are changed in light of the fact that it's a smaller lot. So that helps people too.
Yeah, plus you don't always have to combine your lots. You build on it separately, and they're gonna be valued separately, and you don't have two different bills and two different descriptions and all that. So a lot of people combine them so that you have to deal with all that.
Yeah.
Commissioner Bell?
So I was able to pull up the ordinance just so when you do go back to read it, in case anyone else asks you to, it is section 5.6.25, and it talks about general building additions and connections. So multiple buildings can be constructed on a single lot if a setback requirement can be met. So for residential, institutional, hotel uses, building separation, 20 feet for 1 story, 2 stories are 30 feet, 3 stories plus are 40 feet. So this is everything except where the bungalow court design applies, according to the ordinance.
Now, explain the bungalow. Somebody. Anybody.
It's a housing type. It's just a housing type,
Well, and
yeah.
What,
And it's meant, as it's presented and was in the master plan, it's also meant to be less than a standard house. But I don't see, in what I read in section 2, where we say that that's a possibility.
okay.
Because if it has to be 720 feet, that's a little bigger than a tiny house.
Okay, so
And-
we're talking about something that could possibly be, what is that, side by side, something like kitchenettes type of thing?
Well, in the bungalow court, let's see,
There's,
5 to 9 homes.
yeah.
So you're really talking about much smaller homes. But then going back to section 2, which is where we were talking about how big a house has to be, we don't actually call attention to a bungalow there. So I think that's a mistake in the ordinance that has to get fixed, because if we're going to allow bungalow courts, we have to define what the size of the bungalow is, because
So-
there's no way you can get 5 houses at 720 feet on a standard 60-foot lot, I don't believe.
Well, through stories you can. So if there were, I'm sorry, Chair.
No, go ahead.
So additionally, the unit size with the bungalow from the earlier discussions were, a bungalow court is a small-scale house cluster of homes. It features 5 to 9 small homes arranged around a courtyard. So it's 5 to 9 homes in the courtyard that face each other. It helps increase the residential density, but each unit has different floors. So the way we looked at bungalows is either there's an upstairs and the lower level basement or a main floor in the upstairs. And the main floor was between 480, 672 square feet per story. So you had to have 2 stories with the bungalows.
Okay.
But they were facing each other in a court, and that is the bungalow cluster.
And you can see an example of it on the screen.
Okay, I'm not good with that, but.
Page
Chairman-
32.
Okay, I see it, but I don't see it. Okay, I got on glasses and
I'm
still
going to
can't see.
recommend the zoning ordinance to you, and we'll see
Okay.
if we can get you a copy.
Okay, if you can email it to me, because my computer, I'd like to get it to read to me. And just, not to get personal, but prednisone is bothering my sight a little bit, so and my computer reads to me when things go to looking a little blurry. But my question is, when we go out into the community to take those walks, can we start up there where I live? Because I just heard Ms. Bell explain something that I had actually thought about years ago upon purchasing these properties. And then along the way, when it comes to some of us getting older, fixing things medically, where some of the children that want to come home and take care of an elderly adult, the disabled parent on one floor and the youth upstairs or in the basement or what have you, that type of thing is what I just heard her say. And I would just like to, yeah.
It's
And I'm sorry,
multifamily housing.
correction,
Yeah.
it's not the basement. The basement does not count. I misspoke, I apologize. It's the first floor and an above floor. Okay.
Multifamily housing will be one of the things that we're going to make sure that people are aware of. Where you have two families living in a house, they both are paying rent or on the mortgage, and this could be advantageous for both of them. So when you start looking at 3 and 4 unit apartment buildings, this would be one of the ways people who can't afford a house could actually afford income property. And in some instances, you could actually live in a unit rent-free while you have your tenants in the other units paying the bills. So these are different ways that we're trying to set this up so that the residents of the existing neighborhoods are not negatively impacted with new housing or excessive densities. So that's why we are doing some of the, not we are doing it, we're trying to make sure that the ordinance matches the community plan. Do we have any more discussion that we need on this? Commissioner Henry.
I just wondered if we had looked at co-living. It's another up-and-coming mechanism that people are using for housing. And I think that Benton Harbor is going to be prime for those kind of facilities because our younger population and the economics in our community, that we find somewhere to share housing. So this is happening in big cities right now, and it will come to Benton Harbor. So it's something that we really need to regulate or put in our master plan.
Jerry,
Is-
if I may, the gentlelady just hit on something that we had a discussion about almost 20 years ago when we first started the plans, and that was that a lot of children whose families moved out of the city and moved out into rural areas are moving back into the community and making things accessible to those and their families when, you know.
Chairman, to answer the question about the group living, we did discuss co-living, and it is in the ordinance under either group living, and it's considered either boarding homes or lodging homes. And they are both in the ordinance, and they are permitted under multiple use, mixed use, waterfront, local commercial, and central business district. Yes. Mixed use waterfront and multiple unit residential. And multiple unit residential.
I'm going to recommend that we be allowed to give classes on how to read on the zoning ordinance, and I will walk you through the whole procedure from the beginning to the end. One of the things that we asked our consultant to do was to allow us to put this on the city's website, the draft, where they can see it and leave it where we can interact with it and this will give us an opportunity to be able to basically have a good knowledge of what it's all about without having to interact with the city staff. So, and we'll make sure that anyone needing copies of the ordinance, we'll see if we can possibly make PDF copies of that available to them. Any additional comments, conversation? We're approaching about another 10 minutes. I'd like to move on and keep this, be wary of your time. No additional questions? Are we ready to move on to our next agenda? This is, yeah, we're done. Okay. Today is considered a regular meeting. It's not special, so I believe everyone except the mayor is in attendance today. Okay. I'd like to move on to agenda item number 8, commission comments. Do any of you all have comments that you would like to make at this time? Okay, in the absence of comments, we need a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion is made by Commissioner Adams and supported by Commissioner Bell. Call the roll, please.
Commissioner Adams,
Yes.
Commissioner Archibald,
Yes.
Commissioner Bell,
Yes.
Commissioner Henry, Commissioner Hensel,
Yes?
Commissioner Marshall, Manager Little, Chairman Reed.
Yes,
Motion carried.
we are adjourned.